Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to INSEAD Online Faculty Masterclass. Today's masterclass topic is Digital Transformation, Leapfrogging Opportunities, and Social Impact with Professor Felipe Montero. Before we begin, I would like to kindly ask you to take a moment to review the information appearing on the screen. Please make sure that you close other applications in your computer to avoid audio interference. Kindly note that all of you as participants are on mute during the whole session, but you can, however, submit a question without disrupting the presentation. Just simply click the Q&A button on your toolbar. We will also have a polling for the masterclass, so kindly connect yourself to polef.com/FelipeMonte944. Register yourself to be able to participate in the polling. So, my name is Anindita. I am a Marketing and Events Officer. I facilitate campus events at INSEAD. Today, we are honored to have Professor Felipe Montero, Senior Affiliate Professor of Strategy and Academic Director, Global Talent Competitiveness Index, and Anne Garrett, our Director for MBA and MIM Recruitment, who will be moderating today's masterclass. Welcome. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Anne and Professor Felipe to begin the session.
Thank you very much, Dita. So hello everyone and welcome to our first online masterclass. So today we'll be discussing how digital transformation can offer significant leapfrogging opportunities for emerging markets and its potential for positive social impact. My name is Anne Garrett and I'm Director of Recruitment for the MBA and the MIM programs at INSEAD. I'm based in Fontainebleau, and as all of you, I'm very excited to hear what Professor Felipe Montero has to say today. But before I hand over to Felipe for the masterclass, I would like to spend a few minutes taking you through INSEAD's degree programs. Can we move to the next slide, please? So as one of the world's leading and largest graduate business schools, INSEAD brings together people, cultures, and ideas to change life and transform organizations. So we have more than 1,600 participants annually in our degree programs, and they offer global perspective and cultural diversity that prepare our graduates to excel and succeed in their careers anywhere in the world. We also receive over 9,500 participants in executive education programs, in open programs for individual executives, customized programs for organizations, and also online programs. The alumni network is robust, diverse, and globally connected. With more than 59,000 alumni distributed across 175 countries, with 166 nationalities, our alumni are citizens of the world. Every day, they play a key role in championing INSEAD's values, visions, and ventures, and ensuring business acts as a force for good in the world. Next slide. So this year is a very special year for us because we will be welcoming our first cohort of MIM students. The MIM is designed to empower the next generation of well-rounded, agile thinking, and innovative individuals who are ready to make a positive impact in today's society. The accelerated 10-month MBA curriculum develops successful leaders and entrepreneurs who create value for their organizations and their communities. Our MBA program also focuses on developing leaders looking to switch careers, and on average, our MBA students are 29 years old. The Executive Masters in Finance program prepares financial leaders to give them in-depth learning into finance and management, and the program is primarily taught on the Asia campus in Singapore, a global and regional financial hub with a progressive financial markets. INSEAD Global Executive MBA program is designed for experienced professionals who wish to develop their leadership skills while they continue to advance their current careers. On average, our participants are 38 years old and have 13 years of work experience. The TMBA, it's designed by INSEAD and China's prestigious Tsinghua University in Beijing, and combines INSEAD global presence and Tsinghua's expertise in business in China. The program is ideal for those wishing to develop business and their knowledge in the market. And last but not least, the EMC, Executive Master in Change. So you have noticed that we love acronyms at INSEAD. Will take you deep into the basic drivers of human behavior and the hidden dynamics of organizations. Can we move to the next slide, please? So as the COVID-19 situation continues to evolve globally and we're unable to meet you in person as much as we would love to, we'll be hosting other masterclasses with world-renowned faculty members, as well as program-specific online events where you will have the possibility to learn more about our degree programs. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send us an email and we'll be delighted to help you through your journey with us. Now I would like to introduce you to Felipe Montero. So Felipe is a senior affiliate professor of strategy and also the academic director of the Global Talent Competitiveness Index at INSEAD. Professor Montero obtained his PhD in strategic and international management at the London Business School, and his research focuses on global open innovation and the role of boundary spanners. So if you have any questions during the masterclass, you can just type in your questions in the Q&A box and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of Felipe's presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you, Felipe.
And thank you. So if you could stop sharing, I'll share my screen. And I mean, first of all, welcome to INSEAD. If on the one hand, I'm sad that we are not having this masterclass face-to-face, and typically I would be doing this at INSEAD or in different parts of the world. On the other hand, I'm happy that we have almost 500 people today together. We wouldn't be able to do this if we were in a single classroom. Welcome again to INSEAD, and she said that she'll be handling your questions in the Q&A. As Dita said as well, we'll be doing some online polls, so we have some interaction while I'm presenting. And the website is the poll everywhere. I will show you exactly URL in a second. So maybe let me just give a quick background about myself so we have a better sense of where I come from. I joined INSEAD about 8 years ago. I'm a professor of strategy. I teach the MBAs when they start. I also teach them when they finish. So I'll be teaching my global strategy elective now, and I always joke with my students, it's very good to see you as you start and then as you leave INSEAD and see the treatment effect of INSEAD on you. Before INSEAD, I was a professor at the Wharton School in Philadelphia. Before Wharton, I did my PhD at London Business School, as I said. I also taught at London School of Economics. A long time ago, I was responsible for the Harvard Business School Research Center in Brazil. So that was the time I was spending a lot of my time, maybe 1/3 of my time in Rio in Brazil, 1/3 of my time traveling Latin America, and 1/3 of my time in Boston. So I wrote a lot of cases about Latin American companies. And a long time ago, I had a real job. I worked for the investment bank area of a very large Brazilian bank. This is the time of privatizations in Brazil. So I was helping foreign investors during privatization of energy, telecommunications. And this is how I met my wife. My wife is Argentinian. And for those of you in different parts of the world who like football or soccer, you know how tough it is for a Brazilian to be married to an Argentinian. And I say all this to give a little bit more color, but also to maybe show you what it is the life of many of us at INSEAD. So I'm Brazilian, my wife is Argentinian, my kids were born in the UK, we now live in France. Every day we speak 4 languages, nobody understands each other. And in many places in the world, we would be a very odd family. I think at INSEAD, this is pretty much the life of many of us. And I hope that one day, if you come here, either coming here again, if you are an alumni, or if you join us, you experience a little bit of that global diversity. And talking about global diversity, I'd like to invite you to show where you're connecting from. And I can see that a lot of you have already answered that. Let me give you maybe 30 seconds more. So for those of you who have not answered yet, you have a chance to do it. You can see on the top of the screen, you have to go to poav.com/FelipeMonte944. If you have any troubles doing this, feel free to use the chat and ask some help from Gita, and they will help you. So it's fascinating to see right, the global reach of this conversation we're having today. A lot of people connecting from Europe, a lot of people also connecting from Asia, some people in Africa, some people in the Middle East. Maybe it's still too early to have our friends connecting from the Americas. So it is 11 a.m. here in France. It looks like someone connecting from Canada. And again, this is pretty much the spirit of a school like INSEAD. Let me move to the next one, and you'll see, which is asking you go to the same website, but can you just share with us if you are alumni, current student, admitted student, applicant, or maybe you're just kind of curious to know more about the school today, or maybe we have some colleagues joining as well. And as you answering, you can see on the bottom of the screen how many people have already answered. We have about 130, so we still have a lot more. I'm giving you a few seconds to do it. And maybe as I do this, let me also change something here, which is, what you're seeing behind me is kind of INSEAD campus here in Fontainebleau, but maybe let me take advantage that we're not at the school, and I'll just give you a more realistic picture of where I am. So I am here doing this call from my home office in Fontainebleau. I live very close to INSEAD campus. It's a beautiful small town in France. And a lot of people who come to INSEAD end up living here, and we basically walk to school or bike to school. By the way, as we also getting those answers, at the end of this conversation today, I'll be happy to answer questions that you may have about the content of today's presentation, about INSEAD, about my experience in other schools. So looking forward to that part too. So let me move on. I mean, at least we have a sample of who you are. So you see, we have roughly 1/3 people applying, another third people who are already admitted. I'm really looking forward to seeing you here. I teach all of you when you come to INSEAD in Fontainebleau. I teach one of the courses in the admission week, and then please do let me know and say no that we didn't have a chance to meet face to face, but we met in this virtual class. And we also see that's got about 40% of you who are just trying to learn more about the school. And my suggestion is always talk to people here, talk to faculty, but also talk to students, current students, alumni. They always have a different perspective to share. So let us move to the topic of the day, which is, let me move to the slide on digital transformation. And I believe that a lot of you are interested in doing something in terms of digital transformation. Let me show you one first slide. And if we were face to face, I will be asking you, what is the key word in that slide? And if I were to highlight it myself, I think the key word in that slide is simply the amount of potential impact that all those technologies have in the economy. So, right, you may agree or disagree with McKinsey, and I'm sure that some of you joining this call today who are either working for McKinsey or have worked there. I think what matters to us here is just saying, no, all those technologies will have a huge impact. If it is 1 trillion, 10 trillion, I don't know, but it's very clear the impact is huge. And if the impact is huge, the question I have is, what are the opportunities for leapfrogging? Okay, especially as Anne was saying at the beginning, if we think about leapfrogging in emerging markets. So why don't I give you also a few moments for you to write down, just quickly, when you think about leapfrogging, which words come to your mind? And as you see, as you answer, you will see your answers popping up on the screen. The larger the word, it means more people answering it. And you see a lot of people highlighting innovation and digital technology and breakthrough, right? But then many other things, healthcare, African. I will just lock here so you have an idea of what you highlighted, but clearly we talk about transformation, talk about innovation, about the technology. So let me start with this. And my view of leapfrogging is really, how do you take advantage, okay, of the lack of existing infrastructure to jump? And I mean, literally, when you think about leapfrogging, right, we think about a frog kind of skipping, kind of going, and I think that when we think about this in the technological terms, is how do you use the lack of infrastructure to adopt the most advanced technological methods? What is the advantage that the emerging markets have there? Is basically they have a lack of legacy, and by having a lack of legacy, they may be able to, instead of trying to follow the same trajectory of developed markets, it's just skipping certain phases. And it's interesting because, and I think here at INSEAD, I teach a lot of executives, both from emerging markets and very developed markets. And I saw that a number of you are joining from Europe. So when I'm teaching your colleagues from the largest European multinationals, and we talk about digital transformation, a lot of them would say, no, the big challenge for us is how do we change, right, years and years, sometimes decades, right, of mindsets, of old ways of doing businesses. And I think what is interesting as you think about emerging markets is maybe they have a lot of problems, but they don't have that legacy. And this lack of legacy might allow them to leapfrog. So let me start with this. How many of you know M-Pesa? Do you know what M-Pesa is? So going into the poll app and let us know if you know what M-Pesa is. And it's looking like, right, that maybe for 2/3 of you, you don't know what M-Pesa is. And what is interesting, and I will move on. I mean, I don't expect to have answers from everyone. It's just to give you a flavor, right? If you were in class, I would be asking, can you raise your hand? And how many of you know it, or how many of you don't? What do we know about M-Pesa? So M-Pesa, it is, right, a mobile payment solution that started with a Vodafone project in Kenya that ended up being much bigger, much more important than anyone predicted at the beginning. So basically the idea there is in Kenya, a lot of people were unbanked, no bank account, no credit card. And the story that people tell, right, even the CEO of Safaricom, the former CEO of Safaricom, is that before, if you want to send money from one place to another, you have to give money to the bus drivers and say, no, when you go to this other town, this other city, can you give money to my, I don't know, my uncle, to my grandmother? And obviously, many times the money disappeared. And I think M-Pesa came as a very basic solution on how you can have mobile money, which now we say, oh, of course, that's for me. We have Apple Pay and we have so many other mobile payment solutions. But this is a while ago, and this is in Kenya. And this is very simple, okay? So it doesn't require a smartphone. Even our old Nokia phones would work. And I think the intuition there, and when people ask me about, can you think about an example of leapfrogging? To me, M-Pesa is clearly a very strong one, is how do you skip the whole idea that people would have, I don't know, bank accounts and then credit cards, and then maybe have virtual credit cards and then have mobile payment solutions, to just having zero, nothing, right? No way of transacting, to go directly to mobile payments. And M-Pesa has been very successful. Safaricom, the telco, right, company who provides this solution, they've been growing substantially, and the M-Pesa part of the business growing a lot. And this is very recent. In kind of 1 month ago, roughly 1 month ago, Vodacom and Safaricom really accelerated the this mobile payment processes. So in Africa, in Kenya. So I think this is, as you think about, and we will then make the connection with social impact, but as you think opportunities for leapfrogging, opportunities of kind of adopting technologies is not following the same trajectories of developed market. Clearly, right, financial inclusion and mobile payments in Kenya is one example. I think that a lot of you joining from India as well. This is a classic example of India coming up with a digital ID from maybe before that. You didn't have a kind of a unified ID system in the country. I always joke, and maybe I can do this even virtually to show you. If I go and open my wallet here and I show you my driver's license here in France, you must be joking, right? That your driver's license is still like this, and it is. I mean, there's a more modern one, but the idea here is, you have 1 billion people. How do you go and if you have to have an ID, how do you go, and instead of having the traditional systems, you already go for the most sophisticated one, biometrics, etc., etc. Maybe this is less intuitive to you, but let me tell you an example of a case on leapfrogging that I worked recently. And for those of you who like fashion and who are joining from Europe, you may have heard about this gentleman before. He was the man who created the Fashion Week, the Paris Fashion Week. And then after the Paris Fashion Week, we also had the New York Fashion Week, and then had the London Fashion Week, and then we have Milan Fashion Week. And then you see, really the world of fashion is concentrated in those capitals, right? The New York, London, Milan, Paris world. And then you have an emerging market, right? And you have the UAE saying, maybe Dubai can become a global fashion cluster as well. My question to you, again, and maybe I will hide your responses. Do you think Dubai can become a new cluster for the fashion industry? Let me give you, I see a lot of answers. Maybe I give you 30 seconds more or 1 minute and see what you view. And while you do this, I have some coffee. So I see one question here on the chat. I think Mario was asking, what's the difference between what M-Pesa is doing and what Societe Generale was doing already 10 years ago in terms of mobile payments? I think I would say it is really the breadth of it. How M-Pesa managed to do this at a very high level all over the country for a lot of people who didn't have any bank account. And then they create a whole ecosystem around it. So it is, of course, there are a lot of other solutions. I think the major thing about M-Pesa is how they became the benchmark in the breadth in terms of how many people they did it and how many people they simply skipped from not having anything to just moving directly to mobile payments. Let's see the results. 2/3 of you believe that Dubai can become a new cluster for the fashion industry. I think I wish we were having this conversation face to face and we had more time, and we'll be discussing why and what are the conditions. But what I can tell you, and maybe this is I've been looking at this idea of how they can do this, and if they want to do this, do they really follow the same path as London, Paris, Milan, and New York? And I have done some research on a company in Dubai called Fashion Forward Dubai. And basically the idea they had there is saying, no, we cannot really replicate what the capitals of fashion, the traditional capitals of fashion in Europe and the US do. We'll just have a different approach to it. Let's think about what's going to be the future of fashion weeks. Maybe the future of fashion weeks will be more and more digital. So maybe what we should have cameras, right, all over, and being able to, really capture what the models are wearing, and then people can click and they can choose what they want to buy, and this will not be limited, to the, I don't know how many 100 people can be sitting on the front row in a fashion week like this. And what to me is really fascinating here, and I don't know how many of you have been following this, is, and I wrote a case. So those of you interested, if you Google for it, you can buy this case. Ended up winning a couple of years ago as the best case in the Middle East. But to me, the point I was going to highlight is what's interesting. This is from kind of 10, 15 days ago, is to see that given the COVID crisis, the London Fashion Week will go digital this year. So let's think again and also see, right, the opportunities that leapfrogging may allow to emerging markets, because now who is better prepared to have a digital fashion week? Is it really the traditional companies or the traditional cities in that case, or are the ones who have been experimenting already leapfrogging for the next technology? I'm not saying the fashion forward Dubai is the solution for it, but I think the idea, right, and the concept behind it, I think is very interesting as you think about leapfrogging. So let me now kind of zoom in into a part of the world that I am doing a lot of research and teaching, which is Latin America, and particularly in Latin America, Brazil. And as I think about leapfrogging opportunities, and then you see my frogs leaping there, I really think that kind of this continent, and Brazil in particular, is really ripe for that. So this is a huge country. Let me ask you this. I mean, how do you compare Brazil and France, geographically speaking? Their size, are they roughly the same size? Is Brazil larger? How many times larger? Let me get a sense from you, and you can guess, and I would never know. If we were having a class, maybe I would have kind of participation grade. Maybe we'll be worried about what would be your guess here. You can say whatever. It's just for our fun of interacting. So let's see some answers. And most of you think that Brazil, it is 8 times larger. So it's clear to you that it's larger. And the correct answer is letter D. Brazil is 16 times larger than France. And maybe this map gives you a better illustration of that. If you were to put Europe inside Brazil, that's how it would look like. This said, the other kind of part of that story is that it is a huge country with huge problems, okay? Going from poor infrastructure to deficient education and health systems, inequality, right? So this is a big issue for the whole Latin America. I was at the OECD here in Paris last year, and the Secretary General of OECD, he said, no, Latin America is not the poorest continent in the world, but is the most unequal. So, right, you have this big inequality problem, and also a lot of red tape and corruption. And I'm sure those of you doing business in emerging markets would relate to that. So then my question is, as you look at the sheer dimension of a country like Brazil, and you know of the big problems that it has, and I'm just kind of enumerating a few of them on this slide. And you also go back to my initial slide on all the opportunities that digital brings. What can be done, right? Is this an opportunity for Brazil or not? And let me try to give you some elements that makes me believe there's a big opportunity there. So what you see here is kind of some metrics coming. This is from the Hotsuite from a couple months ago. And you see things like when you look at time per day spent using the internet, right? And then you go and see Brazil and Colombia. I don't know how people can spend all the time per day. And this is pre-COVID, okay? Because now you can say, yeah, now we are all confined in different parts of the world. That's why I'll be curious to see the updated numbers after COVID. But even pre-COVID, people are spending 9 hours a day on this. And it's not only Brazil, Colombia, but also other countries in Latin America, like Argentina and Mexico. and then you say, okay, let me have a sense of how much people are streaming TV content over the internet. And it was quite surprising to me when I saw this, to see that kind of top 4 all coming from Latin America. And then you go for mobile payment services, and again, you see kind of Brazil there, and you see a lot of other emerging markets on the top countries in that regard. And then if you think, let's go to social media, then you see again, right, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, all, and then Argentina, all top there. One thing about social media I'd like to share with you, and some of you more familiar with Brazil might already know this. I mean, you go to a country like Brazil, and Brazil, right, is number 3 on LinkedIn, number 2 or 3 on Instagram, right? The WhatsApp is the most popular communication medium in Brazil. So it is really widely adopted. And to me, and maybe if we go back to the M-Pesa example, it is this idea that you may have an underlying technology. In the case of M-Pesa, was just basic cell phone, not even a smartphone, just basic cell phone. The cell phone penetration in Kenya is very high. So people, again, there they skipped, they leapfrogged, they never had a fixed line, as most people in Europe had. So they came from 0 telecommunications to having like a mobile phone. And then you see this underlying infrastructure. And I think today, right, if you think about the underlying infrastructure as being social media, for a number of services, a number of new business models, I think the opportunities are huge. And if you go to mobility, and this is also very close to us here at INSEAD, because what you see in terms of mobility in Brazil was not only Uber, but also a Brazilian company called 99, who was founded by one of our alumnus. And now he sold it to Didi from China. This is kind of huge adoption. Okay, so huge adoption also ways. So I think the message I want to send to you, showing those pieces of data, is just say, no, you have a huge country, huge problems, and then huge adoption of technology. And then the question is, if you think about how can we use those technologies for creating social impact, and again, for those of you who are alumni, or for those of you who are already more familiar with the school, you have seen that kind of the past 2-3 years, how this kind of commitment that we have here at the school in terms of making business as a force for good, meaning how we do want business to be very successful, and we really believe that success in the business setting means success not only in terms of profits, right, but in terms of what we're doing for society. I believe that combining this idea of digital transformation with leapfrogging, there might be a lot of opportunities for social impact. And that was the spirit of this article that I wrote, and I believed you received. And you see, there's a lot of data there. But what we wanted, myself and my co-authors, with this note was to raise awareness that there's a lot going on in terms of potential, and that potential is not only in terms of new businesses that you're going to make profit from them, but also what's going to be the social impact. So let me ask you this question here: is why do you see the major opportunities for leapfrogging in emerging markets? And I'm giving you some. And as you answer this, let me just kind of share with you what is the roadmap here. So I just have a few more slides, and then I'll stop, and then we'll come and kind of share a few questions that you had already posed in the Q&A box. So I'll stop and answer those questions. But also, as I'm doing this, feel free to kind of ask other questions, and then I'll try to answer as many as possible. That's the idea. Okay, let me see what you answered. So, right, almost, maybe government is the one that you felt there were less opportunities, but then you were pretty divided in terms of seeing huge opportunities in financial inclusion, education, health tech, smart cities. Let me maybe give you an idea, which I think it is, at least in my mind, it shows the possibilities. This organization that you see on the screen, it is the largest hub of startups that have a social impact mission. It is in São Paulo, in Brazil. It was also co-founded by one of our alumnus. And to me, right, when I go to São Paulo, and I take, for those of you who are interested in the executive MBA program, I have a one-week program, a one-week module of the executive MBA that I take the students to São Paulo in Brazil, and where we visit the major players doing digital transformation, from the largest banks or the consulting firms like McKinsey, Microsoft, etc. But also we visit this organization, because when you go there, what you see is the number of new business models which are using technology, and which are using technology in many instances, for segments of the society that don't have much, and which are bringing a lot of opportunities for inclusion. And inclusion might be education, right, as you highlighted, inclusion in terms of financial inclusion. So fintechs, and in terms of increasing financial inclusion in Brazil, this is huge. You can imagine, right, if education and distance learning in a country with continental dimensions like Brazil or India or China or Russia for that matter, the opportunities were already, before pre-COVID, they were already huge. Now that all of us, or most of us, are confined and having sessions like the ones we're having now, interacting with your students and your faculty, your professors online, education will be a sector where you have a lot of opportunities. Then I think health, and also in terms of, you think about civic engagement and government. So my encouragement to you is, you can see, okay, and I'll tell a little bit about the project I'm doing there. But let me just go back to this. You can see those startups, and a lot of us look at digital transformation and we think about the digital part of it, the technology behind it. I would encourage you to pay more attention, maybe more emphasis on the second part of digital transformation, which is transformation, and really transformation for social impact. And I'm sure a lot of those startups, right, they may make a lot of money, but also, right, if we are interested, and I think if this was true kind of a few months ago, I think this is even more true today. If we're really thinking about what those startups will be able to have, not in terms not only of financial impact, but social impact, I think the potential is huge. Let me just give you another flavor to this. So I'm working with some of my colleagues in Brazil, and we're exactly trying to map what are the startups which are doing this, and just to give a sense of the size. So we initially asked for which startups we tried to select which startups were really using technology for leapfrogging with social impact mission, and we identified a very large number of them. Then we start really doing kind of in-depth case studies, and right from financial services to smart cities to green tech, there's a lot going on there. This is just some examples. So watch the space. I'll be doing more of that. But maybe before we go, and I go, and we can have you can start kind of telling me what are the questions that were posed in the Q&A box. My proposition to you is also, as you look at so many of things that have to be done, and and I was enumerating some of those issues of a country like Brazil, which is not kind of exclusive of Brazil. Many other emerging markets would have, from financial inclusion to inequality, etc., etc. And you see the distance that they have from the most advanced markets. What do you see, right? Do you see this as a half full or a half empty glass? Why don't I ask you? And you are like me, right? Most of you see the opportunities, and maybe, right, that's probably why you want to come and do an MBA or right, or master management, or one of our programs is really how do you take those opportunities forward. And being Brazilian, I certainly see this as a half full glass and a half full glass of caipirinhas. So what I like to do is I like to stop here and go and maybe you already selected some questions. I'll also take a look at the chat box. So
yeah, so actually there are so many questions. There are actually quite a few about climate change, and one from Julie. What is your view on the impact to solve the issues of climate change? The elephant in the room?
So I think definitely, right, climate change and the impact of a kind of cleaner technologies, and which can go right from smart cities to right other technologies that are related to to climate change is huge. To me, maybe one way of connecting this with the emerging market setting is for a lot of those. This is exactly where you can make most impact, because, for example, I remember being in conversations with people in construction, right? If you have kind of environmentally friendly buildings, I mean, the impact that you can have in emerging markets is much stronger, because there's a lot yet to be built, while in many developed markets, things are already built. So again, it's a big one, absolutely big one. And I think it fits very well with this idea that the impact in emerging markets can be even stronger. And next one.
Yes, so how do you see COVID-19 impacted digital transformation in companies, knowing that their purses are tight with limited budgets? Quite a few questions about COVID-19 as well.
Yes, so I'm sure that you all, many of you have seen, right? What made this transformation accelerate in your company? Was your CEO, was your CIO, and then, or was it COVID-19? And I hope you say COVID-19 was the major catalyst for implementation, not because, right, of any deep convictions for many companies, but simply for necessity. So I see it mostly, okay, as a positive impact, as an accelerating catalyst impact. And I believe that a lot of those will be on things that can really have an impact on the bottom line, either by creating new ways of offering products to your clients, or really reducing costs. So I believe the effect is positive. It is a catalyst. Maybe, right, because of what you think in terms of tight budgets, maybe will be less in terms of creating new things or using digital in a more long term. I think the impact, the most immediate impact to me, is impact that have a more direct relationship with the bottom line. I think, and you have to unmute.
Sorry, yes. So we have a question from Olivier from Washington, D.C. So what's the role of regulations in this leapfrogging? Entrepreneurs can do a lot, and they need a regulatory environment where they can try new things.
So Olivier, you woke up very early for this. Thanks for doing this. Yes, and I think it's very interesting because regulators play a dual role, I would say. Because on the one hand, if they regulate too much, let's go to the case of M-Pesa. If there were a lot of regulatory restrictions at the beginning, M-Pesa would never have really, they wouldn't be able to have the success they initially had. So I think, to me, at the beginning, is kind of, you need regulators who allow for those innovations to, right, to emerge. On the other hand, you need regulators who are also there when those things start taking shape to make sure that they are done for, right, for the common good. So I think my sense is kind of regulators are really important. The question is when they should intervene, right? So it's walking this fine balance between allowing for entrepreneurial spirit to emerge, and at the same time, how do you go and realize when intervention is necessary or more regulatory frames are necessary?
Yeah. So we have another a question from Chunfi Falam, sorry. So digital transformation will have a huge impact to emerging economies. In terms of government preparation for such transformation, what is the roles between private and public sector contribution?
So I think it is, I think the bigger the problem, and I think Annie was saying that a lot of people asking about COVID. I think the bigger the problems that we have, I think the clearer, at least in my mind, it is the need for kind of a multi-stakeholder type of solution. I think it's going to be very hard for either private sector or kind of public governments to find the solutions independently. So I think we need to have this collaboration. And I think we also need to have this collaboration at a global level. And the way I see it is, I think we have a lot of local problems, and a lot of people say, right, that we are all in the same boat, and other people say, no, we're not in the same boat. We are on the same kind of storm, people in different boats. So I appreciate that you might need very local responses, but probably we do need to have the global knowledge to find those local responses and to activate those local responses globally. So my understanding is partnership between public and private sector and partnerships across the globe. I don't think that the nature of the problems that we had, and COVID is one, climate change is even a bigger one. Anyone in isolation will be able to solve them.
Okay, so a question from Diogo. Latin America has already an internet user penetration rate higher than other emerging markets, such as sub-Saharan countries, which offer a great opportunity for fintechs to have an impact in the short term. Knowing that nearly half of the population is unbanked in Latin America, what is the expected outcome from fintech startups on the bankarization rate in the coming years?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people believe that fintechs will play a very important role in terms of financial inclusion. I think the big question, maybe linking back to the question about regulators, is at the same time, what you see is kind of the large banks in certain countries, and we talked about Brazil before, they are very, very powerful. So we do need, right, regulators to make sure that fintechs have a decent shot at kind of being able to compete with those very, very large players. And at the same time, I think those large players are changing themselves and starting to collaborate more with those fintechs.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Beate. It will be interesting to hear your thoughts on how digital transformation impacts civil society and democracy in Latin America, but also globally. Is it making it easier for civil society actors to participate and engage, or is it creating another type of divide?
These are kind of really tough questions, meaning, I mean, what I'm trying to say is these are very important questions, but very complex. And I think it can go both ways. What I think digital does is increases transparency, right? And increases access to information and increases the speed that people have access to information. So these are all positive things. Obviously, the concern, we may have two concerns. One is what's the part of the population who is kind of digitally deprived, don't have access, right? So you increase that inequality because there's part of the population who don't participate in this digital. So I think that's one concern. And I think how do we address this concern is really making sure that you include, and maybe you have to have very basic solutions, right, for cell phones which are not very smart, that don't have a lot of kind of memory, and still people can participate, can engage. And the second one is, I was saying, what digital does in terms of increasing transparency, I think relies on the assumption that the information that people are getting are true. So I think the other big challenge is, how do you make sure, right? And how do you address fake news? Because if people have more access to information, have more access to what's happening, but what they're having access is not what's really happening, but to kind of false interpretations of what's happening, then we have a big problem. So I think I can see, right, two challenges in that question. One is, how do you make sure that you decrease the digital divide so people have access, right, to the digital world? And two, when you have access, how do you make sure that what people are getting are not fake news, right? How do you diminish the fake news?
So another question. So in emerging markets, in emerging countries, leapfrogging comes often with improving social conditions. How can developed markets navigate the oftentimes trade-off between the need to leapfrog and innovate, and the other hand, social responsibility and the protection of certain social groups or professions?
Can you see the end of that question again? Can you
Yeah,
repeat,
sure.
please?
So in emerging markets, leapfrogging in emerging countries, leapfrogging comes often with improving social conditions. How can developed markets navigate the trade-off between the need to leapfrog and innovate, and the other hand, social responsibility and the protection of certain social groups?
Yeah, I think to some extent we go back to the issue of regulators too, meaning you really want to skip, right? So you really want to adopt the most developed technology, so that the leapfrogging, but you don't want to do this, right, at the detriment of inclusion, or at the detriment of, right, competition. So you don't want to have monopolies, right? So even the case of M-Pesa, people say, no, isn't it an issue that now M-Pesa is so big that they may have kind of, they may exercise monopoly, etc. So you know, I don't want to repeat myself, but what I think all those questions somehow are reinforcing is kind of the collaborative nature of solving those problems, right? That you cannot do this in isolation. And two, that kind of trade-off, a modern trade-off, right? That need to make sure that we are, on the one hand, take advantage of technology, on the other hand, doing so in a responsible way. And what I'd like to do, I'm aware of time. I mean, do we have any questions, not about the content, but anything about INSEAD that I can tell, that I can answer before we close?
All related to your presentation, Felipe.
Okay, so let me quickly scroll down. I just saw something. I think it's Kaushik Mondal was asking, specific to MBA education, due to COVID-19 impact going forward, any difference in selecting virtual distance education, on-campus education, how business schools are planning for that? I think I can speak for what we're doing here at INSEAD, as all other schools. We had to very quickly move from, right, on-campus classes to digital classes. And maybe I could see maybe 2 or 3 things going on. I think on the one hand, there were a lot of things which were already happening, right? So a number of us were already using Zoom. A number of us were already using kind of online polls. A lot of us are using kind of, I don't know, collaborative online tools. And those things which before were just kind of maybe pilots, they were rolled out. Okay, so very quickly, things that we're just experimenting, right? Also, things that we have this go live room where you have it kind of like a TV studio with each student is a different screen. So these were all initiatives that were already there. And I think, right, what COVID made is kind of make those initiatives now really at the center of it. So that's one trend. The other trend which I see is, I think this school is very entrepreneurial. Okay, right, as you know, is an independent business school. We don't belong to university, which puts us in the position also of having to answer things very quickly and with a lot of agility. And I see this happening both in terms of what my colleagues are doing, but also what the students are doing. And I'm really pleased with it. And maybe the third thing is, and I think we experience this today, I think having the ability to tap into a global network, even if it is virtual, I think it is fantastic. And I can give you an example. I'm teaching my MBA elective now, starting at the end of the month, and it was literally over this weekend. Okay, when I got the final schedule, I was approaching the people, the guest speakers I would like to invite. And it was amazing, right? Because I was inviting people from China, from Italy, from Spain, right? From Switzerland, from Brazil, from many different countries, right? All of this kind of CEOs, founders, and people responded very positively, right? And so I think it's a positive flip side of being doing this remotely. Is many times for you to get some of those speakers, people have to fly. I mean, no, right? And having the network that INSEAD has to be able to tap on this network globally, I think it's fantastic. And maybe the final one is, this is all true, but I think all of us, at least I can speak for myself, I'm also very much looking forward, okay, to going back to campus and experiencing again, right? Being able to talk to people from so many different countries, so many different backgrounds. And I think it's very reassuring, at least to me, to be in a place where, despite you have so many tensions for isolation, so many tensions for protectionism, you go to a place like INSEAD, and if you know, this is really a group of people from all over the world working together and having this spirit of working together. So my sense is, right, what we do, I mean, the changes in terms of technology are here to stay. So I predict that we're going to do more and more of those technological solutions, and we have kind of hybrid solutions until things get back to normal. But also, I think we will not lose that DNA of still connecting people from all over the world in the same community, be it virtually as we're doing now, or kind of face-to-face very soon. I'm aware of time, so, and what I'd like to do is maybe, let me just go back to my presentation here and show a slide which is not mine. This is a slide that our Dean typically shows, which is a call for action. And this is also pre-COVID, okay? This is when some of you ask about climate change. I think being where we are, that we are interacting with some of the most important leaders in the world, it is clear the nature of the challenge that we're facing. And it's really is putting us in a very clear question of, we need to do something, okay? And we always say, right, if INSEAD, that has this amazing network all over the world, and what you see here is the map of where the alumni from INSEAD is. If it is not us, okay, if it's not us that have all this global reach, who will do this, okay? If it's not us as a business school that is so global, who will do it, right? And if it is not now, okay, and I think COVID just accelerate this, right? If it's not now, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for to really play a role in making sure that, right, you who are coming to this school are really leaving this place really committed to use, right, the power that you're going to have in the different companies that you're going to operate to make a positive impact in this world. So I do hope that you come here. This is Fontainebleau in a sunny day. I do hope to have the opportunity to welcome you here. For those of you who are already decide to come, please do make sure that you reach out to me when you're here, and I'll be delighted to kind of have coffee with you and chat. You have all my contact details there, my email, my webpage, and everything. Good luck. Stay safe. That's the most important thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Felipe, for your very engaging session and all the insights you shared with us today. I also would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and for Dita and all the people behind the scene who help with this event. So thank you very much. We wish you a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and stay safe. Thank you very much.